You know, we never know if it's
Yeah.
actually going to work.
It says now streaming. We're
Oh,
back.
good. I like
I'm
that.
going, I'm going to jump on Facebook.
Yeah, let's check just in case. I love it that you're so tech savvy because it makes my job easier. I don't feel like I have to like manage everything.
We're on. I see
We
it.
are
We're
on.
on. Yeah.
All right, we're back. We have got Janessa Mondestin is back, and she had a little week off for a little self-care, which we all need once in a while. I'm so glad that you spoke up and just said, look, I need a break this week.
And thank you for offering that grace there too. I really appreciate that. That's definitely a true marksmanship of an advocate and an ally, right? Like, hey, do you need to pause for a moment? Because we can always regroup next week. And I appreciate that.
You know, I have a lot of Black friends, and
Mhm.
last week was hell. Like
Mhm.
almost every single one was just getting bombed by my text. Like, we are dying.
Mhm.
Our nervous systems are crashed. Kenosha is killing us.
Mhm.
What the hell is going on in this country?
Mhm.
And so I kind of thought, I wonder if Janessa's having a hard time too, because it's just so unbelievable
Yeah.
what's happening. And you know, I can't even imagine. I
Yeah.
can't even imagine.
And the back to backness of it, like you don't get a chance to pause, break,
Yeah.
decompress, and people expect you to just show up and be on it at all times. And it's just like, wow, where's your compassion? I thought we did yoga. Where's your compassion?
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I appreciate
Well,
that.
I'm 100% about that. I mean, I feel that we should all say when we need something and try to take care of each other. What else can we do, you know?
Hmm. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
So I think we're just going to pick up right where we left off, which is bold intentions and a bold impact in the world. And you know what it really boils down to is many of us have had a recent awakening, or maybe we had it, you know, for decades, but we didn't follow through with our actions as much as we had wanted to basically change the culture of the companies and organizations that we work for.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. And I'm excited also about this time because um, the news keeps repeating the same situation. And now organizations who were dead on for change when it was big in June is now like, oh, you know, so it's about being bold now when people are like, oh my God, this marathon is just too much. I'm just going to walk it out. It's like, no, we're still running the race. It's an ultra marathon. We're still running this race.
and it's going to be for decades. I mean, we're putting little drops of water in the bucket to make a difference over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I have to say I get a little frustrated with people when they're like, "Oh, I'm getting pushback," or "Oh, we're losing customers," or "Oh, I don't know if I'm really 100% in." It's like, no, that's not the answer.
Right, right, right. And not putting themselves in the shoes of the person who's been um, held in underrepresentation, under being underfunded, being undereducated. Like, how long have we been saying, "Oh, I'm getting pushback"? I mean, it's historic, you know. And so that little bit of push that you're feeling does not even compare. Doesn't even compare to what everyone else has been feeling on the opposite side.
Right? It's a pebble compared to a whole gravel pit.
Yes.
And you know, you and I had a couple of discussions this last week. It's about bringing people of color into the white yoga world, but it's also about cultural appropriation
Mm-hmm.
of the South Asian culture. I mean, there's a lot of things coming together in the yoga world about representation, inclusion, belonging, feeling welcome. I listened to a wonderful podcast on cultural appropriation by Shaila Vaidya on
Mm-hmm.
the Connected Yoga Teachers podcast this week. You know, we're talking about all of this,
Mm-hmm.
even uh, you know, gender identity and
Right.
including people who are trans. And I mean,
Right.
there's so many people that want yoga, want to belong, and
Mm-hmm.
we are yogis, and we're not doing a very good job of making people feel like they belong in our yoga studios, in our corporations, in our organizations, and
Mm-hmm.
even in our friendships. I
Right.
just want to say one more thing. I know I'm talking a lot, but you know, I had a friend say, well, I think I need to increase diversity in my yoga marketing. I
Mhm.
said, great. What are you going to do about that? She said, I don't know, because I don't know any people of color to ask.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
like, okay,
Wow.
well, that's a problem.
Start right there.
Yeah, there we go. Like, how come you have no friends of color? Like, what is that about?
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah. And so it is this, they call this that performative allyship. Like, oh, I now know that I need to include you. So I'm going to put you on the marketing and therefore it benefits me that they don't have to call me out. And I'm like, the intentions behind that is exactly what? That you don't want to be called out, that you're afraid to be called into action. And, you know, hey, this is the conversation with like Krishna and Arjuna was like, I'm calling you to action here. You need to show up first with yourself before you just say, hey, I'm going to put this performance on for everyone else to not attack me. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This is where it starts,
And
is
so
looking
then
at
I
that.
did some reading here. This is my weird little mind. I was like, well, why do people pretty much stay within their groups? I understand why South Asians or why people of color would stay with people that make them feel more safe and included and welcome. Like, I get that, but I really was curious about white people and why we're just staying with white people for the most part, you know, and why it didn't occur to us that, you know, maybe we should reach out and befriend people. And the article that I read, I can't even remember where I read it, but it basically said that white people feel really uncomfortable trying to create friendships with people of color when they know that they are saying things, doing things, being certain ways that are offensive.
Mhm,
And it makes them have shame and feel badly about themselves ultimately. So then
mhm,
they avoid it and go on their way, right?
mhm,
Instead of
mhm, mhm.
continuously trying to learn and grow and figure out what the hell we're doing. I mean, I have friends call me out all the time and I'm like, okay, thank you. Call me out, do it. Let's learn.
Well,
So
I mean, I can't obviously can't speak to that. I'm going to trust that your opinion is exactly what it is. But you know, I think that also too, if you try to reach out to someone and they slap your hand, that's also a reason why people won't extend their hand again.
mm,
So, you know, I'm going to talk about it from that perspective of like, if we want to heal as a community of people, humans, persons on this planet, it means that we have to extend our hands just the same, right? And to be heard respectfully means that you have to participate respectfully too.
yeah. And I mean, I've thought about that a lot. Like, how hard must it be to have been not cared for, not taken care of, not welcomed, not anything?
Mhm,
And then someone reaches out their hand and they do it in a very clumsy way. And
mhm.
I mean, you don't have to, but maybe you choose to be gentle and kind and empathetic and explain to them why that doesn't work for you. Like that. Damn.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I don't know if it is the culture of being called out on being wrong. I think that fear of, oh my God, I thought it was this way and now it's that way. I've had more people reach out to me since the George Floyd situation that they said, I don't want to offend you, but I want to have this conversation. And that tells me right there, we're not savvy about this conversation. We can be savvy about books that we learn or language, you know, composition and sentence structure in English, but this is, you know, starting first from a humble position of like, I don't know it all. I probably don't know anything, but if I offend you, correct me. And that humbleness is the hand being extended as opposed to mansplaining or white splaining. You know what I mean? Like, this is the reason, like, again, how is the hand being extended out? And the intentions versus impact, right?
Yeah, I have to say, I was in a meeting recently where someone had made a pretty big faux pas
Mhm,
around race
mhm,
and racism. And I thought the meeting was to come together and let that person hear
mhm,
how they could improve, how that impacted people. And we spent the whole meeting for an hour hearing why they still thought they were right. And it was just like,
yeah.
okay, I'm even a white person and I'm just
Right.
want to like, I don't know what,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, instead of being, like you said, being humble and saying, please tell me how that impacted you. Please tell, I want to learn.
Right. And so in those moments of being the witness and seeing that, hey, there's some damage being done here, or explanations that just doesn't, it's not logical, it's not sensible, it's not sensible at all. It's about stepping up and not being silent and waiting for, all right, I'll just message them afterwards to say, hey, you know, I saw what you were saying, I agreed with you, but I just didn't want to step up to the plate. So this happened to me in the past week, where I said something in a meeting where, you know what, maybe we should think about a different avenue of approaching this content. We do production for yoga videos, and maybe we should be a little bit more inclusive at that. And the conversation was, be inclusive with the accomplishments of someone, or be inclusive because the person has representation. And I'm like, the person has representation and the accomplishments that you're looking for. So it's a win-win situation. And it became incredibly combative, the argument. It became from a debate to literally an argument. And then it came to someone saying to me in the meeting, that's just reverse racism. You're just being a reverse racist right now. And everyone was just stunned, like, really? You have so much privilege that you believe that I can actually occupy that space of, it doesn't exist. I don't have the power to be the race. May have prejudices as well as everyone on this planet does, but I don't have the power to tell someone that they can or they can't do. And they were like, yes, you do. Right now, you're exercising that power. I'm like, okay, we need to backtrack here and do some education here in this idea of equity, inclusivity, and diversity. And then several hours later, I got the text message. So this is after everything that happened last week, right? Our Black Panther, our King T'Challa had passed away on Saturday, right? All the way through all the rioting and the protests and another Black life in Rochester, which I'm in New York. That's not too far from me. And I know people who live in, I have family that lives in Rochester. And someone reached out to me and said, hey, I heard what you were trying to say. I agree with you. I just was too afraid to step up. And I was like, ooh, that's just as damaging, right? It's just as damaging, which was, it all happened on Thursday, which was like, you know what? I need this break.
Well, and I want to talk about that because I've been part of some pretty big yoga organizations, and the amount of white silence is deafening.
Yeah.
And not just white silence towards people of color like you, but even towards allies trying to stand up and do what's right. Yeah. And total either white silence or complete combative, like you were just explaining in that meeting. Yeah. Yeah. And this is 2020 in a yoga organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's looking at their privilege through their lens. Like, I gave you one, so 8 others can pass because you had this one. So I'm like, this is insane. This is not pieces of pie here. Yeah. This is talking about indigenous language, and this indigenous language needs representation. Yeah. And we need to work harder to find the representation in order to, you know, convey this conversation of cultural appropriation not happening at the organization. We need to move more progressively. So,
and that's the thing. I mean, there's no shortage of people with the knowledge. I mean, we can't, I mean, we cannot go there. That's not even possible.
Right.
You know,
right.
Especially in the case of cultural appropriation and not hiring and working with people of South Asian descent. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And so it means that we didn't try hard enough. We just didn't try hard enough, or maybe didn't want to try hard enough. So the question became like, I can't find anyone of South Asian descent to talk about Sanskrit, or I can't find anyone.
That's just hilarious. Okay, I'm done laughing.
Or I can't find anyone to talk about yoga philosophy. And I'm like, well, show me the search that you did. Show me the search that you did. I'd love to see where you looked. And this goes back to the same conversation where you're having where, oh, I don't have anyone of color, because obviously if you're just going to search on Google, your algorithm, who you are and what you search for is going to be fed right back to you. Facebook is
so yogic, isn't it? Because, you know, yoga says we basically have this perception and we create our own reality, and then we start to believe our BS, right? Well, an internet Google search does the same thing. It just feeds you back what it's seen you put into the equation.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you're just seeing that one reflection. I don't find them and I can't find them is like, tells me more about you
Yeah.
than it tells me about your search, results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, if we do find ourselves in the unfortunate situation where we don't have very many South Asian friends or people of color or Indigenous friends or trans friends or whatever, well, then that takes a commitment over time, not tokenism, not let's bring them in for a photo shoot, but okay, what's wrong with my world that I don't associate with anyone other than people who look like me, who are in my same socioeconomic class, who have my level of education or my level of wealth or my level of, whatever.
Yes. And that means making a bold impact, starting with self. That's that svadhyaya, that's that self-reflection. I mean, it's a bold move that they're talking about in yoga, is like, stop for a minute, projecting out, and start with self. That's the hard work.
100%.
Yeah.
And do that svadhyaya. Like you said, it's an inside job.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And even in organizations, they also need to see that too, right? So it's not just the person, but it's also the person and the organizations and everyone who also supports the organizations as well, that we carry this culture of, are you looking in?
Yep.
Are we looking in?
The organization is just the macrocosm of the individuals in there.
Exactly.
So if you have people who are not doing their svadhyaya, who are not actually living their yoga, the organization built by that leadership is going to reflect that. And I think most yoga organizations are in that situation right now.
Bingo.
And some of them, like Credit to Yoga International, has hired you as director of people and culture, and they're like, we're going to work on this. We know it's a problem. We're looking inward. We have to figure this out. And there's a lot of other ones that are either using tokenism, not looking in at all, or nah, I'm not sure. I'm getting pushback. Oh, it's a little uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing too about resources, that's the one thing that I will credit about Yoga Alliance, because thinking about the other governing body that we affiliate with, they've tried. I'm going to say that they definitely have tried, where it was like, okay, if you can't find anyone, has Yoga Alliance done anything? There's so many yoga organizations. What are they doing about this topic? So again, it's about not just doing the bare minimal. This is like, oh, I'm tasked to do this. Like, this is my dharma at this moment, to show up here, right? And do the work and be bold about it.
A couple of months ago, or maybe 6 weeks ago, the International Association of Yoga Therapists had a town hall on DEI, and they have a DEI task force, and they're starting to move into this space. And I can't remember the numbers, but I think it was around 116 people showed up to talk about this, which is a huge number. I don't know if IAYT has ever had that many people show up for a town hall. And it was packed. And at the end, they did a survey and said, how many of you want to continue this conversation, would come back again, found this valuable? 100% of the people were like, yes, we're in, we want this, we're doing this. And so that tells you the level of interest from the members.
Yes. And going in, right? It's all about going in instead of just projecting out this outward image that it is what it is. And I appreciate that. I appreciate when organizations are going to sit there and poll their own members, poll their own audience, and say, what's next for us? You tell me what's next.
That's
because
right.
we see that we're off somewhere.
Yeah, and to have that many people from the inside say this is a top priority. It's not a side project. It's not something we'll do if we have some more time or some more money or maybe one day.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we want this now.
Yeah.
And so like, oh, go ahead.
And so that goes back to that conversation of, what do you commit to? How do you want to show up in the world?
Yeah.
And I mean, I love the fact that they polled the people and they said, you want to hear more, we'll give you what you want. And that's essentially what happened also at Yoga International. People were saying, hey, why can't I find anyone who looks like me? Because I can find them on Instagram. I can find them on Facebook. I mean, why aren't you reaching out and extending that hand? So yeah, it's amazing to do that. And I hope studio owners do that too.
And it's so interesting. You turned me on to this, but now I'm like on board with it because I didn't want to think this way, but it is reality. So we have to. You said that basically that organization needs to make money. And if the members are saying this is of value to us, that's how they're going to make money. That it boils down to the bottom line. So really at this point, any organization that doesn't get on board is just not very smart.
Exactly.
I mean, I wish it was a moral decision, but it actually is the best financial decision too, as you wisely pointed out. And I was kind of like, oh, that hurts, but it's true.
It is. It absolutely is. And so when they see their numbers, change and shift, and if they do as detailed as what's the demographics that's participating on our platform, then they'll start to see whether or not, DEI is an important thing to them or not. And I'm going to say also, because I always look at the competition, I always look to see what's going on out there. I'm very well aware that there are some organizations out there who just want to paint a little bit of color and not change anything. But we, as people who are going to pay that conscious capitalism, we also have to call them to task. Because if it's not changing, why should I continue to pay for your lifestyle that doesn't even represent or resonate with me? You don't even want to see me as an expert on your platform, participating on your platform. You want to just use me for sake of a shield. Then I have to do that same Swati. I still have to go in and say, what is that worth to me? Should I participate in that? So it goes back to the individual again.
Well, and from your perspective, I can see both sides. On one side, no, it's not the end all say all. But on the other side, like Obama told us with the Affordable Care Act, like, hey, if we're moving forward in the right direction and you get, 60, 70% of what you want, you open the doors, you're getting in there, getting it done. And over time, we can get that other 30% or 40% or whatever it is.
Right.
Maybe it's okay to participate, even though it's not perfect yet.
Yes, and I do want the members to participate, and participate doesn't mean just pay.
Yeah.
Like, how many people have membership and things and they're like, I just pay, it's just $20 or whatever case, but it's $20 to what exactly? And so it is asking myself, like, do they even support my causes? Because sometimes if we really did look deep down, are they even supporting our ideals and our values? We don't know, because we're just more interested in, hey, this gives me immediate satisfaction now, right? I'm thinking of the company like Amazon.
Yeah.
I can go on my phone and pay for something and it can arrive by tomorrow. But I'm also very well aware of what the warehouse conditions are like and the pay conditions are like, right? And if I was driving on the highway on 95 or on Garden State Parkway or, 287, I can see those trucks literally because they're on a time crunch. Like, is that the type of environment that I would want representative of my dollars to go to? I know everyone needs a job, but I also know that, does that sit well with me when they're at the end of my driveway and they throw the packages out because they got to finish a deadline. And it's usually black and brown in my area, black and brown that's delivering, right? Or even take the US, the US Postal Service.
Yeah.
That's another conscious conversation that we have there. Like, why should we all be participating? We should participate because it affects even the mail that delivers at your home.
Yeah.
So you're not immune to it, right? And so it is that conversation of, we should be bold in our individual actions. We should require bold actions of the organizations that we participate in and we fund.
Absolutely.
That's really radical. I know it's really radical.
No, it's not. I mean, I actually, I'm just going to say it publicly. I have people applying for my yoga therapy school that starts in January, our next cohort. Mm-hmm. I want to go on record saying that if people don't support, working against cultural appropriation, if they don't support people of color, if they don't support improving conditions for race and racism, please don't apply to my school. It's not a good match for you. It's not a good match for me.
Yes.
I don't want that money. It's dirty money to me.
Right.
And I'm not saying you're a horrible person if I'm talking to you.
Right. Right.
You're welcome to live your life the way you want to live your life.
Yes.
And I have values that I want to establish in my company that are going to need some real strength in the upcoming years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the strength to battle my own people from the inside. And, it's like, how much prana do I have?
Right.
I need people who are with me pushing forward and getting where we want to go.
Right. I love that. I love that. I mean, one of my the companies I admire the most is like Ben and Jerry's,
Yeah.
right? Like they're pretty much like badass about like, this is who we are and this is what we do, right? Take it or leave it. And again, in my mind, my vision for Yoga International, Yoga Alliance, IAYT, we should be moving in that direction.
What do
Because
you say though to people like, after this, I'm going to have some emails and some calls saying, Amy, you're not being yogic. Yoga means union. You need to be more outreaching, more empathetic, and you don't want to hurt people's feelings. And we're spiritual. Blah. What would you say to those people?
yeah, yoga means union, absolutely, but I'm going to say yoga also means yoke. And so I'm going to go back to my roots of my grandmother being on the farm, and the yoke was that piece of wood that you put in their mouth and keep them at an even keel. So if you can think about that idea, not just mind, body, or, body and spirit, but people and people, personhood, right? They need to be equally yoked in order to move that cart forward. So if we have this cart that we need to move forward, both sides need to be of equal power, equal agility, right? Equal mobility and equal stability to move the cart forward. The desire
You
is,
just come up with that.
yes, I did.
I need a t-shirt, mobility and stability.
and we need to move the cart forward. We need to move humanity forward. That means we need equal players. And that doesn't mean like one ox could be on the back end and one ox could be in the front. They need to equally yield to propel us forward.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And I was like,
And
thank you.
that's true union, right? A spiritual bypass, and I want to please everybody, and I want everybody to like me, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Yeah.
That's not union.
Right.
That is complete lack of clarity, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always ask people, even if they have pets, if they're like, oh, I can't deal with the farmland kind of, you walk two dogs of equal size and see if one's going one way and the other one's going the other way. How well does that work for you?
You can have two 90-pound pit bulls. I can tell you, it makes for a sore neck and a back that goes out a lot.
So yeah, that is really the idea that I try to, put it more in an everyday life and not an idea philosophy. Because people like to put things in philosophy to guard their own prejudices and privilege. And now I'm saying, no, let's put this into real life. You can have two children. Would you treat either one of them differently? You want to steer them both to success. Would you treat one differently than the other? So why in this instance, between you and me, should we be treated differently? People
and people who don't understand that we have systemic and structural racism, that we have all these things in place. If you don't get it, think about the ways you might have been discriminated against as a woman. My whole career as a professional woman, I have just constantly been beat the crap out of by the boys club. Gosh darn it. Right? Like it's been painful 25 years.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can empathize. I can see what it feels like to be the one who's not included on emails, who's not included in decision making, who's getting bypassed, to talk to the old boys club.
Right.
Like I can feel that. And even if I can't feel what it means to be a person of color or a transgender person or a South Asian that's been excluded from the yoga community, I certainly can take my empathy to them because I too have been excluded in this one tiny small way.
Right. And I completely agree with you. I also know that there's going to be people out there who also on the other end say, I dealt with discrimination, but I wasn't like them. So as long as they had someone else that they were above or superior to, someone to hold more inferior, it was okay that I was discriminated against. And that's where that mindset of like, yeah, but I toughed it out, right? I pulled myself by my own bootstraps. And I was like, okay, do you remember how it felt though? So imagine feeling that endlessly and programming.
And not being able to get out of it.
Right. Right. Like, okay, you pulled yourself up and then, okay, we built our own community, but then someone decides in Philadelphia, let's bomb it. Or in Tulsa, Oklahoma, let's burn it. Right? We want us to be segregated. Fine. We thrived and you still burned it down. You still erased our efforts in the history books. How about if someone just didn't pay you for the work that you did and said tough? And they're like, oh, that's what it's like. Right?
It just leaves me speechless. Like I really don't understand when people don't have empathy for others that have suffered. And that's the essence of yoga, is that we have pratipaksha bhavana, that you're able to take the other person's perspective. And because you're viewing the situation from multiple points of view and stepping into their shoes and wow, what must that be like? You get clarity, you get viveka. And so yoga is not about spiritual bypassing and I'm in my bliss bubble and I'm so peaceful and blah, blah, blah. It's about discrimination.
Yes.
Discrimination and not discrimination against others, but discrimination. Like I have clarity because I've walked in those shoes and looked at it from all these different perspectives.
Yeah. And that's a skill. That's not a skill. That's not a skill that's easily taught in our normal traditional K through 12, practicing discernment. That is a skill that unfortunately gets, I hate to say it, whitewashed, bypassed in teaching yoga.
Well, and it's sad to say, but, and I include myself in this, the more privilege you have, the less reason you have to do pratipaksha bhavana, to look at the other and or not the other, because we are each other, but to have that empathy, because from where you sit, everything's fine.
Right.
It's good. What's the problem? What are you so upset about?
Right. Chill. Right. Shavasana that out. What? Absolutely. I totally, completely agree with you. And I think that is why the message back in June and into July was share the mic. If you're going to go for another training, could you be taught by someone who doesn't look like you? Practice with someone who doesn't look like you. And that might be a way in to see, oh, they do that thing just like I do, learn from someone completely different than you, extending that hand, right? Yeah.
I'm going to have some self-disclosure here that when that happened, when we heard about share the mic and, get to know people and really start to create relationships with people that are different than you, I looked at all my faculty and they were white women, middle-aged white women that had been with me a decade and had eventually come into the faculty position. And that's how it happened, right? First they were students, then they were assistants, and I was like, oh, this is a problem. If anyone looks at my school, they're going to be like, what is this? Right? And so for the last 3-4 months, and I will continue for the next 3-4 decades, I need to plant seeds and plant relationships and get people in here so that it's a much more, diverse in every age and gender and color and religion. And we need diversity, and it's not easy. I mean, I'm working on it. And in 4 months, I've made a lot of progress, but it was a wake-up call for me. I was like, whoa, you say that you're a social justice warrior, you say you believe in this, and then you went and did this unconsciously. Okay.
Right. But that's a bold statement.
What is
folks, the fact that you're able to admit that this is an example of you looking back and saying, well, what about me? And what can I do?
Embarrassed. I was like, oh man.
It's a great lesson that if you can do it, then I can do it. And I shouldn't feel shameful of saying, you know what, I gotta start this now. Like that's that atha now.
Yep.
is this practice of yoga. And I've been saying it, but in this one dimension, I haven't been doing it. So let's do it now.
Or making an excuse. I mean, in my mind, I was like, oh, they have to be trained in our system and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe some people do, but not, I don't need to train everybody for 10 years before they can teach. There's plenty of slots in there that you can bring somebody in for an anatomy. You can bring somebody in for yoga philosophy. You know, they don't all have to be students who made their way up the, you know.
Yes, the ladder. And that makes it also quite difficult for people, because it's like, we have to now expend more money to prove to you. And that goes back to that patriarchal colonialist, you got to prove your worth to me. And it's just like, wait, is that my value system? No. So kudos to you. And anyone watching this who's like, if she can do it, I can do it too.
Work with me. and be humble enough to admit, like, oh man, I have really not walked my talk in that area. I've tried in a lot of other areas and working it, but this particular area was a big black hole. You know.
Awesome.
So I have a little story I want to tell, because I think it really pertains to our conversation. And I'm taking some classes now from it's an Ashtanga Hridayam class at Southern California University. And the teacher said that he was telling us a story about how there was an Ayurvedic doctor and two students came and said, I want to learn from you. They said, great, I need to test you to see, you know, who might be a good student. And he said, here's a whole list of Ayurvedic herbs, go collect them. Here's how you put them together and make the medicine, bring it back to me tomorrow and we'll see, you know, how you did. So both the students come back, the one gives him the formula, he mixes it in water and tastes it, and oh, you did perfect. This is a very, very nice formula. And he said, I'm very proud of you. And then went to the second student, and second student said, I'm sorry, I don't have anything. Last night when I walked out of here, there was an elderly man sitting outside on the street, and as I walked by, he reached up and he put his hand out and he cried out for help. And he said, the second student said, I couldn't leave him there. And so I spent my whole night, I took him home, I fed him, I bathed him, I put him in bed, and he's still there. So I have to go back and get him now. And I'm sorry that I asked to be your student. I'm probably not worthy. I didn't do what you asked. And so I'm sorry I wasted your time, and began to leave. And the Ayurvedic doctor was like, wait. You are the student I want. He said, because I cannot teach empathy. I can teach how to make a formula, but I can't teach empathy. And that story rocked my world a little bit, because I thought, I actually can't teach empathy either. And if you come into my organization, or you're a student, a potential student, or a faculty, or any, if you don't have empathy, I don't think we can move forward. I can teach you or work with you to get all the other stuff sorted out, but no empathy, that's not going to work. And so I thought that was kind of relevant to our conversation today, because where do you go forward in your individual life or in your organization when you have people that don't even think there's a problem, that don't think there's cultural appropriation, or don't think that BIPOC people haven't experienced systemic and structural racism? I mean, if you don't have empathy, I don't know what we can do together here.
It's not going to be a one-time, one-term, only the quarter of a trade line or a tagline of the quarter of 2020. It's going to be integrating it into the fiber of an organization, so that everyone in the organization can realize that there's obviously a message here. And whether again, we can't teach empathy, you're absolutely right. And there are people to this day, unfortunately, who will say the Holocaust never existed. That was a whole hoax. Slavery was because they wanted to come to America from Africa, whatever, right? I can't change those people's minds, but what I can do is set a standard of how to treat people with care and consideration, by putting policies and systems in place that we can be as equal and equitable as possible. And if they get it, they get it. And if they don't, they don't. And if they don't get it, and it's not part of our value system, then they don't belong in our organization, period. It means we have to be bold first.
That's exactly what I feel too. And again, everybody gets to have their view of the world. Everyone can act the way they want. They can think the way they want. They can speak. I'm not the police woman, but
Bingo.
but
Yes.
I know what I want, and I know what I want in my faculty, and I know what I want in my students, and I know what I want in my organization, and I'm not going to negotiate on that, no matter how many people I make mad or turn away.
Yeah.
maybe, and I even to the point, Janessa, where if the universe doesn't want me teaching yoga because this blows me up,
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. I really am. I will find another meaningful thing to do. I'll start a pet rescue. I don't care.
Right.
I love yoga with all my heart, but
Mhm.
I have decided this is my line that I'm not going to cross.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's fantastic. I mean, I hear you. I'm with you. And I would rather say that I'm living in yoga and I'm being in yoga than say I just work in yoga. So I can find anything else that I can do.
That's
I'm
right.
skilled enough, I'm educated enough, I'm articulate enough, I can make do. But if it's going to be outside of my value system, I don't want any part of it. And so if I'm inside of an organization or amongst my circle of friends, I have to hold them accountable, and I want them to hold me accountable just the same. And if it doesn't fit, then, gotta go.
Yep. No hard feelings. Moving
Right.
on.
Right.
We
Gotta be
all get
easy.
to live
Yeah.
the way we want to live.
Yeah.
And even be friendly. I was talking to a friend the other day, like, well, what am I going to do when I see this person again that I know I've clearly made mad? And I thought to myself, I'm going to be friendly, and I'm still going to live my truth, and I'll be friendly. We will not be close. We will not be anything more than acquaintances now. That's okay. I can still be friendly. Maitri, Karuna, Mudito, Upeksha, it's fine. It's cool.
Absolutely. And there's no hard feelings.
No hard feelings.
And I think that goes back to the conversation of external validation. I don't need to change who I am in order to feel validated. I'm solid about who I am and how I want to show up in the world, which we had that discussion a couple of weeks ago. And this all is a nice, long, collected string of advice that one piece doesn't live without the other piece, right? So in order to be bold, I got to be sure about who I want to be and how I want to show up in the world. That's really what 2020 to me has been about. How do you want to show up in the world? And is that really true to you?
And if you feel wishy-washy because you don't know, well, then go do some svadhyaya. It's okay to be in the gray. It's okay to be like, wow, what Amy and Janessa are saying seems really harsh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if Amy hates me now? Or what if I hate Amy now? Like I understand that you and I are pretty much making a line in the sand here. And that makes people very uncomfortable. And it may stir some things up. That's okay. That's what yoga is about, isn't it?
Yeah. And all these really great words like self-care starts with boundaries,
That's right.
right? No, I mean, everything about yoga and Ayurveda talks about boundaries, things that you should do in a specific season, things that you should do during a specific time of your life, right? And so we're asking for the same boundaries in the way that we care for one another and we care for ourselves. Nothing's wrong with that. And it's not about this it's about literally about where do you want to, who do I want to align myself with when I have to, be called to action or be the person to speak about what have you done with your life, right? To me, my higher power will ask me one day, what have you done with your life? I remember. Do you remember?
With
And
this one precious life, what have you done?
right. Right. And so that's my motivation to stay right on target with who I want to be and how I want to show up.
And when I have felt wishy-washy about some things, I don't sleep well. That's how I know I'm being wishy-washy. But as soon as I ground myself in the truth of what I believe, which is what we're talking about, I sleep very well, knowing that I've made a lot of people mad, but I don't lose any sleep because I feel good with me.
Yes.
I'll be able to look at that higher power and be like, I did my best. I know I screwed up a bunch,
Right.
but I did the best I could at that given moment.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to let that worry me too much because we all learn differently. I have to respect that. That maybe I always have to think about, if this was 1954, the year that my mom was born, those folks are still alive. And maybe they were raised one way and they might be completely different now. Right. So, not to
Or
get
not.
or not, or not, right. Or, more rooted in the things that was of the past. Right. But I'm always going to err on the side of assuming positive intent. I'm always going to assume that first. And then if someone's like, I just can't agree with you, Janessa, I'm going to say it's okay. Stay in the gray. You can come along for the ride respectfully.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones who are just like, let me explain to you why you're wrong and give me all these other connotations as to, well, look at Obama. He did good for himself. And look at this person. He did good for himself. And I'm like, okay, do you know what tokenism is? And then it gets to a point where I can't teach you anymore. So a lot of times I get a lot of information on Facebook. Could you keep posting more about stuff? And I'm like, I'm not here to educate you. I'm here on Facebook, just like you're on Facebook to socialize.
Yep.
If you can't pick up a book, if you can't, how many free DEI conversation book clubs are happening? You won't invest in any of it. You're waiting for me to give you the information.
And by the way, Janessa is volunteering her time for this podcast like 6 weeks in a row to help all of us understand this whole thing.
Yeah. And still you can't get it.
Yeah.
Then you might need to take a course. You might need to go on Google. There's so many resources out there to claim that you don't know. Yeah. You're not trying.
Right. You're not trying. Mm-hmm. Danielle, who's the head of the DEI at IAYT, she basically said, in 2020, we cannot claim that we didn't know. She said, you're actively not trying to figure it out. You're not putting any effort into it if in 2020 you're saying, I just didn't know, or I can't figure it out.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we have literally walking around with computers in our hands at all times. Like, really? Yeah. With all this social media content that's being produced on a regular basis, there's no way you couldn't know. It's putting the blinders on and saying it doesn't apply to me. Or like you said, extending your hand out to reach out to someone and say, can we just keep it real?
Right. And I do understand that everyone's nervous systems in 2020 with all that's going on, and you have family deaths and you have COVID and finances are really, really tough. I mean, I'm not saying all that doesn't exist, right? And maybe you have to limit the amount of time you spend trying to learn because you just are not able to hang on right now. Like I have empathy for that. Mm-hmm. But that isn't a pushback. That's, I need some self-care because I'm really, really struggling. And I accept that. If somebody tells me, I'm sorry, I can't do it right now, my grandmother just died of COVID, of course, of course. Yes. It's fine.
Yes. And you're absolutely right there. And I think that also it doesn't give anyone the excuse to say, I just don't want to participate because I have all these other fires to put out, because people of color still have the same fires and they still need to adapt to a white dominant society. We've always had problems, and we still need to adapt to society. So I feel you, I hear you. I want that situation to get better for you, but doesn't mean stop the work. You can pick up the book and read one day, like, Layla's book, Me and White Supremacy. It's literally a daily journal. You can be stuck on day 15 forever, but at least you got the book in your hand and you want to work through it.
Absolutely. I read on Facebook a woman after George Floyd, she had kind of been advocating and an ally for about a month after that. And then I saw her write one day, I just want to have a happy summer. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not going to post about this anymore. I'm done. I'm going to the beach for 3 months. I was like, oh, that's nice. Wow. That's a great opportunity. Like that to me is not okay. That I want to have a good summer, so I'm not going to pay attention to this anymore.
It's like the end of summer. The semester's over. and I just need to check out for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not mad at that, but it doesn't.
Kind of was.
I mean, it's a lot of, listen, I deal with that regularly where people are like, I'm going to go on vacation. And I'm like, during COVID, you can go on vacation? Where do you go? How do you do that? I don't know how to do that. We have an extended family home now with almost cousins and everyone else in the one household underneath one Wi-Fi service. And so we need to learn how to share it all over again, right? That's a privilege. That's a luxury that you can have during a pandemic to say, I'm going to check out.
Yeah.
I don't get to check out. I have to be hyper vigilant every single day that I'm presenting to anyone. Even if I've known you forever, I still am guarded and armored and ready. So, you know, I talk about that same experience when people say that to me, like, I'm going to go check out for the summer. I just don't want to do the work anymore. It's just been a tough spring. And I'm like, I wish I can say the same. Yeah. Well, you should just be able to do that. And I'm like, I can't. I'll tell you why my responsibilities look like.
Yeah.
And this is because I have to work harder because of this situation that I'm at that's outside of my control.
Yeah.
I wish I could check out. So can, you know, and if you're going to check out, can you do 100% of your work? If you can, you know what I mean? I'm not going to hold the work for you. I'm not going to do all this stuff and hold your weight. No.
Yeah. I think somebody wants your attention.
Great.
Does that mean our podcast is over for the day?
Well, she was like, I hear that.
Yeah, she's like, woof. So are there any last words you want to share with us today? Or do you feel like we've covered what we needed to cover? I know we wanted to do bold intentions and bold impact in the world, talking about your personal cultural competency as well as your organizations. Anything else you can think of?
You know, I have to talk about for a brief moment about standing with the people. Even if you're not sure, right now it's this conversation of, I don't know where I stand, but the mass majority standing on one side and another minority standing on the other side, meaning in numbers, right? And you have to sit there and say, well, maybe there's some truth to what they're saying. That curiosity that comes to that, that's also a bold move. Instead of turning on the blinders and saying it doesn't apply to me, saying, hey, you know what? Maybe that does exist. And that to me is just well enough a good way to start too.
Yeah, have a willingness to be curious about an experience that's different than your own.
Yeah. That's
a great step forward.
Exactly.
Great. Well, let us leave it there because your girl is.
Like, I'm ready to go for a walk. It stopped raining.
First things first, right? Yes. And we wish her, I don't know if this is the one baby that needs some extra love, but sending your doggy some extra love. That's part of your responsibilities too, to take care of these babies. And
that's right. Thank you for that as well. And I appreciate all the well wishes that everyone has sent to me. Appreciate that.
Good. All right. So let's wrap this up. Next week, we have what we have on the schedule is work smarter, not harder, having more clarity about our mission, staying on track, saying no to things, figuring out what your values are, who can you delegate to, how can you hold yourself accountable? And you know, that all goes to, you're basically our business coach to help people improve their yoga businesses and get them on track. So you're going to be using your coaching skills next week.
Absolutely. And we just start sold out for this new season, which is great.
Tell us, do you have one more minute to tell us about your program and how you run it? And people can't still get in, or they can get in, or
they can still get in if they message me. Yeah. So it is the same thing as you were saying earlier, like what are your values and what do you stand for, and how do you want to show up in the world? And we talk about all of that in this course called Align, which is the precursor to expansion, where we're talking about turning likes and follows to full-scale business models. A lot of times people say, I want a million likes on Facebook or on Instagram in order to have this multi-dimensional business and passive income and active income. And I'm like, you don't need that. You need authenticity and being able to know who your customer is. And we start talking about building systems so that people get to show up exactly how they are in real life, which is a compliment to me when people say to me, you just like what I see. like, why would I be anything different? And that's not really a conversation that we talk about in yoga. It's this facade of I got the perfect place and I got the perfect aloe clothes and the Lululemon. And I'm like, you don't need any of that. You need to be real with you. So that's what this coaching program is about, and building up the financial systems to sustain yourself and support yourself without having to work on, oh, I got to be at the studio, I got to do this festival. Stand on your own too. Build it from a good, solid foundation. And that's what we do over the course of 3 to 6 months. So if you're interested, if anyone out there watching is interested, message me, friend me. I'm also on Instagram, Janessa Mondestin, and looking forward to working with you.
Awesome. All right, go walk your dogs. Thank you.
Good to see you.
We'll see you next week. Bye.